Often when one is caught in the act of murder, the case is clear, open and shut. But the case of Alfred Rouse is a little more complicated than that. It was the 5th of November in 1930, Guy Fawkes Night, as it is commonly known, and people celebrated with a number of bonfires throughout England. Many stayed up late, not returning home until the early morning hours of the next day. Two men specifically, who had been walking home from Northampton, noticed a fire. Surely this wasn't anything out of the ordinary until they investigated it, to realize it wasn't a bonfire at all, but a flaming car. A car with a person inside, their body engulfed and charred beyond recognition. Police were summoned promptly and were able to determine by the number plate that the car belonged to a man named Alfred Arthur Rouse. But there was one thing that didn't make sense. Alfred was alive and well, and had quite a bit to do with the body in his car. Alfred was born in 1894 in London to parents who would end up separating when he was around 6 years old, when his mother deserted their family. Alfred, with his two siblings, was sent to live with his aunt and did well in school. He had a certain affinity for music and was noted for his great musical ability. Among being able to play the piano, violin, and mandolin, he was also an impressive singer. Aside from all of this, he was also a skilled carpenter. Alfred eventually took up a job working for a furniture manufacturer. But on August 8, 1914, Alfred's world forever changed after he enlisted when a war broke out in Europe. He came close to death a number of times, perhaps the worst of which was during the final day of an intense battle, when a high explosive shell detonated close to his location. Alfred sustained severe injuries to one of his thighs and his head. Alfred had shrapnel lodged in his brain and had to undergo surgery to remove it. His leg was permanently damaged and he was unable to walk without great difficulty for the rest of his life. He spent extended periods of time in army hospitals and in 1915 was determined to have had his capacity reduced by 3/4, leading to his inevitable discharge from the army. The following year, a doctor noted that Alfred had considerable memory issues and was unable to even wear a hat because of how much his scar would hurt. As the years passed, Alfred had more problems with his memory and issues with getting adequate sleep. By 1920, Alfred had made decent progress in recovery, and the pension he had been receiving for his injuries had been cut off. Alfred became a salesman, one who was quite good at his job, and would spend a lot of time on the road. He had made enough money to buy a house with a woman that he had married, and even a car. Things seemed to be going well, but the long hours on the road, spanning days at a time, had Alfred longing for attention and companionship. He was known to meet with various women and had gotten at least 2 pregnant during his travels. With one child support order already slapped against him and more incoming, it seemed Alfred needed to find a way out before he lost all of his money. And this is what leads us to the burning car with an unidentified victim inside. Allegedly, Alfred, once arrested, confessed to picking up a man the night of the 5th. Having to use a bathroom, he pulled over and got out, only to look back to see his new friend lighting a cigarette. There was a sudden flash and the car burst into flames. The horrific accident was all the man's fault. But then again, if that was the case, why didn't Alfred go straight to police? But that wasn't the only suspicious thing. While standing trial, Alfred commented about the many women he had slept with while working as a salesman. He referred to these women as his harem, and when that information leaked out into the newspapers, Alfred had lost a lot of favor with the public. He was also unable to explain why he had picked up this unknown person, and went even further into damnation when he explained that the man was someone that nobody would miss. But the most damning evidence was when a car expert realized that someone had forcefully turned a nut and screw which allowed gas to flow into the motor, which made a fire much easier to set. The court came to the conclusion that Alfred was trying to fake his own death to avoid the consequences of his lustful lifestyle. With everything stacked against Alfred, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. Alfred confessed to the murder, but never to the identity of the victim, shortly before he was hanged on March 10, 1931. It'd be 81 years later, in 2012, when the family of a man named Williams Briggs came forward, believing that he was in fact Alfred's unnamed victim. Williams had disappeared after leaving his home in London in 1930. Now, with DNA testing available, a forensic team went into action to finally put the case to rest. But there was one problem. The DNA didn't match Williams Briggs, determining that he was in fact not Alfred's victim. To this day, it is still unknown who burned to death in Alfred's car that day, and it's unknown whether or not we will ever know. That's all for this episode. Be sure to check out my other videos by pressing here, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel by pressing up here, because you won't want to miss what's next. And I'll see you next time.